welcome grade 12s. My name is Mahesh and in today's lesson we're going to be focusing on some common errors that are made in accounting. A big thank you to our sponsors Liberty. Thank you so much for sponsoring our show. Guys, please remember, if you haven't, download the Tenfold Education app. It's an awesome app and will definitely help you with your studying. And also another reminder, do check out our YouTube videos at Mindset. Again, that will definitely help you with your revision. Okay. Right, so as I mentioned a few seconds ago, in today's lesson, our focus is obviously on accounting, but what exactly are we going to look at? Now remember, I'm talking from my experience as an accounting teacher, as an HOD that has moderated papers, as well as a marker for the exams, the year-end exams, as well as a senior marker. I have been a senior marker. And sometimes when we mark, we obviously pick up certain errors that students make across schools. And what we're doing today is we're looking at those errors. So as usual, I'm going to ask you to work with me. So if you don't have pen, paper, your calculator, which should be your best friend at this stage in front of you, grab that and we can work together. What I want you to do, yes, I am going to look at calculations, but remember the focus is what are the common errors that you make in accounting, and more specifically in paper 1. Okay, right, so let's start off with the very first error. Now, as you can see, don't have anything on my screen. So what am I going to begin with? Now, remember guys, for the first 10 minutes of your exam, it's obviously allocated to reading. You get this opportunity to look through your information book, your answer booklet, and obviously there's a ratio sheet given for an exam. Now, during that reading time, what is really, really important? Are you reading through every single transaction? Not quite, right? Remember, you are now looking at the various questions that are given, and you are deciding which question to begin with. Now, remember, in accounting, you do not have to start with question 1. So for example, if question 1 is financial statements and you prefer question 2 where the focus is on cash flow because that's one section you know you're going to ace, begin with that question. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. Then, after you've decided in terms of the order in which you're answering your questions, always make sure you are looking at the answer book together with the information book given. Now, why is this important? Because sometimes in accounting, as you are answering question 1, as you're completing, for example, let's say I'm doing 1.1 and 1.1 requires me to prepare the statement of comprehensive income. I'm just going to call it the income statement. You all know what I'm talking about. So while I'm preparing the income statement, 1.2 might also ask me to complete the note, trade and other receivables. Okay. So for example, in the income statement, let's assume I'm working on rent income, right? So my rent income, I'm bringing down a balance from the trial balance of 10,000. I get to the year-end adjustment that tells me 2,000 Rand is accrued. So obviously I'm adding that 2,000 Rand, right, in the income statement. But as I'm doing this, remember, I can immediately go to trade and other receivables, and obviously at the same time, accrued income include that adjustment for 2,000 Rand. Okay, so what am I basically asking you to do? It's not necessary for you to finish 1.1 and then move on to 1.2. Remember, as long as you are aware of what is being asked, you might start on page 1 and then go to page 3. And then back to page 1 and then to page 2, right? So it's very important that you work smart. Okay, so reading. Okay, reading our info book and answer book. Right? Looking through the 2 booklets given, absolutely important. Okay. Right, then what else is important in terms of when you're looking or when you're preparing for this exam? Time. Now, this goes without saying, right? For accounting, remember, accounting students, right, we accurate, but we also work at a certain pace. Okay, and this is very, very important. Now, at the beginning of your question paper, you are obviously given the time that is allocated per question. So for example, let's stick with the statement of comprehensive income or the income statement, and you are given 30 minutes to complete this. Now, what is again important is, yes, in your exam venue, you should have a clock somewhere in the hall or the classroom, but remember, even if you've got your own watch, look at the time that you're actually beginning with the question, and make sure you're not exceeding that time. Now, how can you make sure that you don't exceed this time? Is obviously by practicing, right? Do some mock exams. So when you are practicing from past papers, you now need to assume or pretend, not assume, pretend that you're writing the exam and now focus on the time allocated. So set your watch. It says 30 minutes. Am I taking 30 minutes or did I go above time 32 minutes, which means when I get to my next question, I've got to make up 2 minutes. Okay, so again, guys, remember, you can't do this the day you are writing your final exam. No, you've got to do this in advance, this prep. Whatever tips I'm giving you, you've got to focus on that, and then you know, okay, come November, I'm now ready for my final exam. Okay, right, so let's now move on to more specific errors. I spoke about reading, I spoke about time, and now let's focus on certain sections and some of the common errors that we pick up when we're marking your papers. Okay, so the first section that I'm starting with is financial statements together with some year-end adjustments. Right, so we all know what I'm referring to: statement of comprehensive income, statement of financial position. Obviously, together with that, we get year-end adjustments that requires calculating amounts and recording these amounts in the relevant financial statements. Now, before I start off with financial year, please remember, guys, the importance in the section, in fact, it's every section, of showing your calculations, right? I cannot emphasize on this enough. Remember, when you are calculating an amount, and it often happens in an exam, right? Yes, we get a bit stressed, we have our calculators in front of us, and we tend to sometimes record amounts incorrectly. So for example, let's stick with that same adjustment that I mentioned earlier on, rent income, 10,000, and I calculated 1 month's rent was outstanding, let's say it's 2,000, and in my amount column, obviously 10,000 plus 2,000 is giving me 12,000. Okay, so obviously that is correct, but let's assume in error, right, I'm a bit nervous and I end up filling in an extra 0, okay, which does happen, right? We see this when we're marking. So obviously that's incorrect, right? Because it's not 120,000, it's 12,000. So what now happens in this scenario? And I'm sure your teachers have explained this as well. Remember, what the examiner or the marker does is they now allocate part marks. So let's assume that was 3 marks, right? Obviously the amount is incorrect, but can you see you are now getting 2 out of 3, right? Because you showed calculation. Now, what would happen if a student, okay, didn't show this calculation, right? So there's no calculation given. Obviously, as an examiner or as a marker, I cannot give any part marks, and immediately that 120,000, can you see you've lost all marks. So showing calculation, often we show it in brackets, we show our calculation in brackets, absolutely important. Okay, right. Also, on that note, please remember, if you do not have space, so for example, rent income, right, it's a complicated calculation and I don't have space, there is enough writing space on your accounting answer sheet. Please don't ask for folio paper, right? Remember, we don't mark folio paper, answers on folio paper. You will see at the bottom of your answer booklet, there will be space given. So all you've got to do, make a little star or asterisk or whatever, and at the bottom, show the examiner that was my calculation. Okay, if you don't have enough writing space. What happens if you don't have enough space at the bottom of the page? Then go to the next page or go to the back of your answer booklet and show your calculations there. But often in your exam, there is always space provided where they tell you this is to show your working out or your calculation. Okay, right, let's now move on to importance of highlighting the financial year. Okay, so what am I referring to here? Now we know when we prepare financial statements, we are focusing on GAAP and IFRS, and more, in your case, often it's GAAP. So when we look at the income statement, we know we're focusing on the matching principle, right? When we're dealing with majority of the year-end adjustments. So what is critical is that you remember that my financial year began on the 1st of March and ended on the 28th of Feb. So make sure somewhere in your answer booklet, you actually at the top, you are highlighting that financial year. It started in 2022 and it's now ending 2023. Okay, because remember, matching principle is asking you, show us what has happened for this financial year. Remember, everything part of this or whatever falls within this financial year is what you include in your financial statements. Anything falling outside this financial year is what you exclude. So highlighting the financial year is absolutely important. Okay, right, if we move on, and now we're going to talk specifically on year-end adjustments, common errors. Okay, right, I think before we start with the first error that we pick up, I think let's take a quick ad break. I've gone through quite a bit already. I just want you to reflect on that, or if you need to go and grab something to drink or nibble on, let's give you time to do that. So I'll see you guys in a bit.